We're going to talk about Tim Burton, and we're going to talk about James Cameron having choice words about the Marvel franchises. And it says a lot about what it means to be an actual big-name director in a world full of factory line, lower-budget directors that are hired by these studios. So James Cameron slams Marvel and DC characters, says they all act like they're in college. He's kind of right. Like, they do all have, like, a weirdly, anachronistic sense of humor, like, that spans no
Well, it's supposed to be appropriate for all ages in its humor, which means that it infantilizes the adults watching, and then they use bad language, which is inappropriate for the kids watching, so we just end up confused.
Yep.
Like, when I watched Thor: Love and Thunder, especially, I was like, is this for children or adults? I'm genuinely confused, because you have nudity and cursing, but you also have, like, screaming goats, rainbows, sparkles, like it was, and like infantile, juvenile humor.
Yeah.
So, like, who is this for? I'm genuinely confused.
So he says the Titanic director, age 68, discussed the evolution of cinema in a new interview, noting how comic book characters lack depth. Quote, "When I look at these big, spectacular films, I'm looking at you, Marvel and DC. It doesn't matter how old the characters are, they all act like they're in college. They have relationships, but they really don't," says the Avatar director. "They never hang up their spurs because of their kids." That's an interesting concept, right? They're outside the realm of actual human consequences. So when you try to give them human consequences or relationships, it always falls flat because the money gun's broken. See, I fit that in there. It went
Love
to,
it.
Like, it never feels like there's
Maybe
any
the money
stakes.
gun's just excited. Maybe it's like really feeling
I
this
love
topic.
it. I love James Cameron. Like, the money gun's like, I love Avatar. That's my favorite movie. But it feels like there's no actual. We talk about how death means nothing in these movies, but also the lack of consequences for. I mean, it's an old trope, right? It's an old trope in military dramas. It's an old trope and stuff like this, where they want you to give up and come back to your family, but they're addicted to the life, either to the purpose or to the adrenaline of the work they do, right? So they can't quite give it up. And it's one of those things where, to me, like, when I see those stories now told in old movies where it's like it would be considered kind of played out now, I'm like, why can't we just go back to a formula that works?
That's why I think a lot of people love The Lord of the Rings so much. Think about that last scene where Sam Gamgee returns home and he sees, like, the light inside, and he knew that he was expected, and he walks in there, and it's like actually a tearjerker, and he just says, "Well, I'm back." Like, and there's no coming home and a real ending to a hero's journey for a Marvel superhero, because as we've addressed before, they don't like portraying nuclear families or you know, even the power that death carries, because there's no permanence to death in the MCU. And
Hawkman
this is something that James
to
Cameron said in response to, like, how has having children changed the way that you tell stories?
Yeah.
And I can't imagine there are a lot of family men or women in writers' rooms for Marvel movies or shows.
Yeah. In the comics, you see more. Like the Bat family is a thing, but it's told in this fantastic world where they're all superheroes and kid superheroes and stuff like that, right? It is an interesting concept to explore. Hawkeye has the family at home that he's always trying to get back to. They did that in the Hawkeye series, where his the whole episode takes place, or the whole season takes place over 6 episodes, and it's about him trying to make it home in time for Christmas. And I was like, when we were watching it, I'm like, if he doesn't make it home for Christmas, I am going to literally find a number and call and complain. I don't care how long it takes.
I remember you took specific notice of the way Scarlet Witch in Multiverse of Madness was like, the motherhood was central to her character, and what she valued was primarily her children, and she would go to any lengths to be with them and protect them.
Yeah.
And
or more likely to protect what she believed it what
what it meant for
Thank
you know, her future. Thank you.
Thank you. That was Chris just super chatted to test the money guns.
So even when they portray a mother who loves her children, they have to make it a twisted story that has like a negative twist that also doesn't involve a father.
And that's like,
and in Disney, actually, Kanye West was just talking about this in a conversation with Lex Friedman. He said, and seems rather far-fetched, as a lot of things Kanye says, but like, hear him out just with the way he talks about Disney. He says, like, first they show you Bambi's mom dies, and then they like extrapolate that pain, and it something. Watching stories like that where children are ripped from their parents or parents are ripped apart, it stays with kids as they grow up, and that pain is like, it's something that they carry through life. The stories you're first introduced to, the relationships that you see in the stories that you're first watching as a kid are definitely something that you carry with you and that you use to interpret things later on in life.
It's it feels like are they going to do live action Bambi? Think they ever do live action
Please
Bambi?
no.
No?
How would
Nobody's
you do
interested
that?
in live action Bambi?
No one's interested in live action Lion King.
No.
I don't know why they did live action Dumbo, which we'll get to with Tim
Yeah.
Burton's comments about
I
Disney.
feel like Disney doesn't get what people liked about the animated animals, right? It's not that they
Right.
are animals; it's that they're animated and therefore appear more human in
They're
some ways.
expressive,
Their eyes are bigger.
yeah.
They look so cute.
It was one of the first times in a long time I'd been to a theater, and when he's falling off the cliff, I was laughing because it
Right.
looked so ridiculous. It made no sense.
It's like, no, Scar,
Yeah.
please help me.
No.
No.
So yeah, he
Just
says.
the beady little eyes.
Yeah.
I don't understand why they think that would work.
By the way, this week has been A+ because of all the people clowning on Lex Friedman.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Dane, thoughts on Lex Friedman?
Well, thoughts on that Kanye interview specifically, please.
Let us know.
I feel like that's a whole other segment.
Just a little
do.
tangent as a treat.
Little tangent as a treat. I think they were both really trying. I don't get how. I don't know their relationship, but there's a point in the interview where Lex is like, "You need to trust someone," and Kanye's like, "I don't trust you," in a more colorful and expressive way, and Lex, it just puts Lex in the fritz, and he's like, "No one's ever told me that before." Like, and then Kanye's like, "We should work there." He's like, "I only work with people that explicitly trust me." It's like, what the hell, dude? Like, how can you expect that of people? I don't know. Maybe,
Someone who just met you. That's
I don't know if
strange.
they've just met, because they kind of talk like buddies in the beginning, but you know.
Probably had just met though.
Like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
like you can't expect somebody to trust you after just meeting them. That makes no sense. Let's talk about Tim
I
Burton.
just find him odd.
Let's talk about Tim Burton because you used Disney as a core example there because you mentioned Kanye and how they get you early.
And now that Disney and Marvel are one beast,
Yeah.
Siamese twins, if you will, stitched together in a Frankenstein fashion.
With Star Wars and
Yeah,
Pixar and all the stuff they
I
own.
found Burton's comments to Deadline interesting. He said, "My history is that I started out there at Disney. I was hired and fired several times throughout my career there. The thing about Dumbo, the live action Dumbo, is that's why I think my days with Disney are done. I realized that I was Dumbo and that I was working in this horrible big circus that I needed to escape. That movie is quite autobiographical at a certain level."
Such an art nerd thing to say. But he's not 100% wrong. Like, the big thing here is, like, we talk about how they like to get smaller directors that they can control because a bigger name director like a Tim Burton or a James Cameron would have far too much pull in the ability to make changes to what they want, and they want control of everything that comes out of their production houses. I'm still shocked that they had Sam Raimi make Multiverse of Madness, but even that, they said that there was a ton of changes in there that were made that he had to kind of give in on. At a certain point, the studio is so big that there's only a few directors that would be given more leeway. Like a Christopher Nolan can go in wherever he wants and just do whatever he wants most of the time because he makes the money. But like with these directors, I don't blame them. Like, you go in there, there's adverse office politics a la Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy and all of the mistakes that are made in the production line there. And then you just have the fact that it's a homogenous type of content with very little room for actually creatively driven directors who want to create something that is outside of the typical scale, right? So he's got his unique vision for what these movies should be, and maybe 10, 20 years ago that would have been allowed. It wouldn't be allowed now.
Yeah. Here were Burton's comments about the ways Disney has changed in recent years. and also comparing Disney movies to Marvel movies. It's gotten to be very homogenized, consolidated. There's less room for different types of things. He added that he would never do a Marvel superhero movie. I can only deal with one universe. I can't deal with a multiverse.
Yep. He's like, I can only go like one at a time, please.
I sympathize with that.
Yep.
You know, in terms of the Marvel actors acting like not children, but like college age people, I wonder how much. I speculate how much of that is Robert Downey Jr.'s acting, because he is kind of this like hyper charismatic, likable. It's sort of like 21st century alpha.
He's like the big man on campus kind of energy.
Yeah, he's
So
like Van Wilder energy.
They wrote it to fit him in Iron Man, and then it just kind of stuck for all of them.
Deadpool for sure too.
Yeah.
They want to have his magic, you know. They want to have his like je ne sais quoi or whatever, however the hell French people say it. But they just can't, you know. Like they'll never have it again.
And then, I mean, it should be tailored and adapt to each actor, right? But it doesn't.
Yes.
All the humor fits. Could be every joke could be said by someone else, and it would all fit into. That's not real. That's not realistic to the real world. The funny thing is, in a real multiverse, it would make sense if all the shows felt completely different because the world is viewed differently based on the outside of whose eyes you're seeing it through.
Yeah.
But since storytelling is not the same thing as living in the actual world, you still need some type of emotional through line or tonal through line. That's why She-Hulk failed in a lot of ways. They tried to do a tone that was antithetical to their previous model and then wondered why it didn't work because nobody was told that this is what it's supposed to be. There was a really good, I don't think it was Chris Gore, but there was somebody else who did a really good analysis of the pilot of She-Hulk. He says, if you watch it as a Marvel property, it's awful. If you watch it as a weird sitcom, it's passable. But nobody's really told, like,
That's
you
not
can't,
what it's sold as.
Even if it is, like, you can't divorce yourself. Okay, yes, fine, this is a sitcom, but it features Hulk, who has been featured in a bunch of stuff that isn't sitcoms, has been featured with Daredevil, who's been in stuff that's literally the opposite of sitcoms.
You couldn't get farther.
Yeah, you don't
from a
get to
sitcom.
just drop them in there and expect the tone to just meld perfectly. That makes no sense.
I mean, maybe that's why people wanted the Daredevil cameo, for instance, is just seeing him in a context they haven't seen him before.
Ugh.
But novelty isn't in itself something valuable. Like,
No.
there needs to be some extrapolation of the character.
I'm also over Easter eggs, like you said.
And Brett,
Hate Easter eggs.
to your point, there really is no small role. There's small actors, and I like what you said that, you know, they kind of should have They should have gone on the person for the role, essentially. Yep. And sorry for making a Game of Thrones reference because I know you didn't watch the show, but I'm sure the chat did. And there was a moment in the show where Hodor, they show it's a very small scene or a small succession of scenes where it's a very minor actor playing the young version of a character. And that kid absolutely knocked it out of the park. And I think it's the best scene in the whole show.
No, I totally agree with you. I think that there are actors that no matter how small a role you give them, like, they steal the scene because they are just that talented.
Did
like,
you see that scene?
It's,
Do you know
it's
what I'm
why
talking about?
are you talking about where they kind of explain Hodor?
Yeah, Hodor, the
I
kid's,
have
like,
seen
freaking
that.
out.
I haven't really seen Game of Thrones, but I do know that whole, like, I've seen that whole thing.
Yeah.
And, like, very, very solid. I also think that, like, it's why not everyone can be an actor,
Right.
even if we pay them to. You know what I mean? Like, there are some people who are just talented at telling stories that way or representing a character. And it's also why I fundamentally believe that there are some actors that get cast and kill shows that are otherwise good. Like, when they come on, no matter what makeup or hair or whatever you do, like, they just kill. All of the energy dies with them. And it's especially bad when they're major parts, but even when they're minor parts, they're just awkward.
Summer Glau is seen that way. She's poisoned for television shows. She shows up and your show is about to take a nosedive. She was in
Summer what?
Summer Glau. She was in Firefly. I don't think she's acting as much these days, but she's.
Gee, I wonder why.
Yeah, well, you know, there's.
Yeah, she's a smoke show though.
I mean, what's her name from Grey's Anatomy? But that was more because she was bad to work with.
I've never seen her before.
Kathy.
I don't know. I've never seen Grey's Anatomy.
Oh my God, it's
I know we've talked about her before.
it's the worst show ever.
What's her name?
I just keep thinking like
It's a very woman-oriented show.
It's about doctors that can't stop having sex with each other.
Yeah. Also,
and their
there's like a
patients die as a
shooting at the
result.
hospital every couple like years when they need to shake it up.
The
like,
Grey's Anatomy cast is so incestuous that they've like created some kind of mutant STD.
Johnny Dirt mentions Terminator Sarah Connor Chronicles, which is one of the shows that Summer Glau is in. I've heard very good shows that would be good to put on the list of like shows that only got one season that absolutely deserved more. Like that was like the actual spiritual successor to Terminator, not the movies after 2. Yeah, that's Katherine Heigl. Thank you, chat. Thank you, Stan. That's Katherine Heigl. She's the one who she has that personality that just drags shows down when she's casted on it. But Summer Glau is a very good example of that too. They're just they're poison to the cast. They can't help it. Whether it's their energy or whatever it is. But then, like you said, there's actors that do an incredible job who can elevate material. I was watching, like I've been mentioning Bosch. There's a part in season 2. Well, I'm using current examples for this.
I haven't watched. I just think it's funny. It's your Survivor.
There's a scene where Lance Reddick's character, Captain Irving, his son is involved in an officer-involved shooting, and they make this big show of him being brought to the scene to see it because he's a police captain, so he has to be brought to any officer-involved shooting. And the amount of emotion that they pull out of this guy, who is, if you know Lance Reddick as an actor, if you watched him on Fringe or any of the other stuff he does, if you watched him in the John Wick series, he plays a very stoic person all the time. He's got a really deep voice, and he talks like this, and he never shows any emotion. And you see emotion essentially build from when he pulls up to the scene of in the outside of the convenience store, walking into the back of the convenience store, and they track the shot where he's walking in, and basically the distance that he has to cover gets smaller and smaller, and you see emotion build on his face. They keep cutting to these close-ups, and you see emotion build on a face that for multiple seasons and any other role you've seen him in is typically fairly stoic. Mm-hmm. And that type of thing, that's an example where an actor can elevate the material. Like on paper, that sounds very easy to do.
Mm-hmm. Unlike Morphed Clark, where she's expressionless throughout the entire series and then has one singular scene where she is smiling.
Unless, on a horse.
Riding the horse, and then when Sauron takes her back to her childhood scene with her brother, that was the one time I saw her genuinely smile in the show.
But usually,
it has no power to it.
It only takes one. I feel it only takes like one, like absolutely like once in a lifetime performance in Game of Thrones. I think it was Tyrion.
Yep.
Like. Friggin' A, like he knocked it out of the park. And sometimes
he got married.
He got married?
Who's the kid who plays Joffrey got married recently, and he he didn't want famous people at his wedding because he lives like a very normal life.
Based.
Yeah.
And Jon Snow married that girl he was dating.
Also, in the chat, he says that they heard that Summer Glau is actually really nice. I wasn't saying that she was really nice. I'm saying that her acting energy seemed to be poison for shows that she was on.
There are, I think, people who can be talented and who are cast poorly. Like, even if they are nice and they are talented, they are not the fit for the personality or the character or material that they need to pull off. And, like, that is bad. There are just bad actors who get cast in things and you're like, every time it takes me out of the fact that this is actually just like a TV show. Like, it's awkward, but it's not a reflection on their character, unfortunately. It's more common on either the casting or their talent.
The best ensemble, and I haven't found anything nearly as close, is Breaking Bad.
Yeah,
like everyone is an absolute rock star.
And those are legendary. Those are like the best example for actors like that, like a Giancarlo Esposito, or the actors that are in that show, is that, or Aaron Paul even. Like, those are actors that are so good that they always lead the shows they're in, but there's so many of them in one show that the stage is constantly filled with, at least on the television level, A-list talent, whereas most shows get one or two A-list talents and then it's filled with supporting characters. That shows all actors that are capable of playing leading roles.
But they were perfect exactly for their role, because I know Walter White's wife, she gets a bunch of slack for being obnoxious in the show. But man, when you think of her, the character, and the situation she was in, like, wouldn't you be like that? Mm-hmm.
Also, like, that's how she's supposed to be.
Exactly, that's what I mean. Like, wouldn't you be like that? Wouldn't you be like, frickin' A, like, I'm with the Godfather. Like, what the hell's going on?
And then poor Bryan Cranston has just had like swing and a miss after that. Like he did the Godzilla movie, died in like 5 minutes in the Godzilla movie, and they're making.
I saw him on Broadway in I can't remember what it was called, but like
he was in Trumbo too.
He was like good. He's so talented, but also like the production was awkward.
Yeah.
And there were some other actors similar, like where I was like, your casting is weird. I don't know if I agree with this. I don't remember, but it was a stage adaptation of, I know it's a movie where like he's like a news anchor who announces he's gonna like off himself on TV, and like then they just keep broadcasting for it because it gets more and more out of hand. It's a movie. I just don't know what it is.
Laura Germain, is it German or Germain? Is another person who was like that until she got the role in Lucifer, where that show got a bunch of seasons. But even that one got canceled on network TV and then got luckily picked up by Netflix. But she would go on a bunch of shows and then like they would just be like mysteriously die.
That show made me cringe. Like those
What?
TikTok videos
Lucifer?
that you showed me. I really don't like it, dude.
The marketing was cringe too.
I love Lucifer
Because it was like how Lucifer had like a soft spot for this chick, and I was like, what
does.
the hell's going on?
There's a. We'll get that's for another time. It's for another time.
When
ladies
we
and
start
gentlemen.
seeing Bryan Cranston in the press again, you'll know that it's time for the Malcolm in the Middle reboot.
That's coming up.
series.
They're working on that.
No, wait,
They're
really?
Yeah, they're working on that.
It is-
It's-
Why
It
would you
is-
do that? That's so
is it a reboot or
annoying.
is it a reboot or are they like?
It's a reboot.
Okay, yeah.
I would be okay with like a one-off specialty cast reunion episode, but like let's not do a full reboot. Like that show was good as
I
it
think
was.
it's a member of the original cast that is writing it.
What if they sell meth?
Not enough.
Meth in
What
the
if it
middle.
was Malcolm in the Middle, except Malcolm is a meth dealer?
Yeah,
Jesse.
Malcolm the middleman.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
good.
let's go.
You're a genius, Brett.
Thank you. Thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.
Bye.